Who do you think they were talking to when they said, we're going to take your women and your children?
High Priest Kwatamani, Supreme Soothsayer, Soul Seer, Spiritual Healer and Revealer, Chief Elder of the Kwatamani First Genesis Tribe, the oldest, longest sustained, raw and living, plant fuel consuming, family community order known, over half a century, and still going strong.
We're going to take your women and children. And who was he talking to? Was he not talking to the male?
We shall take you and your wives and your children and shall make slaves of them.
And we're going to rip and tear apart the essence of your family community order. Was he not talking to the male? Listen, listen, listen. Who do you think they were talking to?
I certify to you that with the help of God, we shall powerfully enter into your country and shall make war against you in all ways and manners that we can.
When they said, we are going to take all of your worldly goods, all of your possessions, was he not talking to the male?
And we shall take away your goods, and shall do you all the mischief and damage that we can, as to vassals who do not obey and refuse to receive their Lord.
We're going to use all those things for our benefit, and we're going to put you into a state and condition of mental, physical, spiritual enslavement. Was he not talking to the male?
And we protest that the deaths and losses which shall accrue from this are your fault.
Was he not talking to the male? And we're going to set a system up, systematic enslavement.
Let us make a slave. We have created an orbiting cycle that turns on its own axis forever.
Into perpetuity.
The nature that opposes humanity will continue into perpetuity.
Unless
a phenomenon occurs.
Unless a phenomenon occurs.
The unless did come about, and the unless is the reality. There was a miraculous occurrence, and a phenomena manifested to breed, seed, and feed a new consciousness of man, he and she.
Guided and protected by he who honors the feminine phenomena.
And the unless is the reality. To breed, seed, and feed a new consciousness of divine children of the sun. A new consciousness that will actually maintain a sacred garden culture presence. A new consciousness of the first Genesis, man, he and she. We are talking to the male who was intruded and invaded upon by that oppositional nature of energy. There was a tremendous interference, interruption, destabilization of those original attitudes, values, behaviors that maintain a harmonious system that carried humanity, maintaining a tree of life culture, that is a sacred garden culture, upholding the essence of communal order, staying in focus and in tune with whole life energy, making sure that he learn, teach, interface, interrelate, and give it as an example. Securing, guiding, and protective nature over women and children, the feminine. She, the heart, soul, and core that birth who we be, putting forward every effort of her existence to manifesting the basic principles of humanity, that is, divine humility, love, respect, grace, harmony. We got to comprehend that. Disregarding that toxic, foul, and wretched call that manifested after the fall.
The fall, a fallen state of being, fueled by a lower and lesser nature of energy.
That toxic and foul nature of energy had manifested within those generations and generations and generations that eventually spread into the sun belt. That nature of energy which had infested and possessed those beings within those cold and freezing experiences actually manifested a toxic, foul, and wretched nature of thought and reasoning and action, and then spread that like a plague and said, there should be no other before me. If we comprehend the warlord who says, I am a jealous warlord, and I will slaughter any enemy that come before me. In other words, the master warlord, who is the voice of that toxic parallel, that is the breeding ground of that self-destructive, opposing nature of energy, is saying he will destroy anyone within his inner sphere that do not uphold and maintain his attitudes, his values, his behaviors, his beliefs. It becomes clear that we're talking about a nature of energy that actually is self-centered, individualistic, greedy. We're talking about feeling, a kind of feeling that lets you know that you're dealing with a nature of energy so cold and heartless and merciless, and it wants to declare itself as righteousness, righteously destructive. A nature of energy that actually says in every attitude, every value, every behavior, and every belief that it is a God of war. Never forget that Set, Sutik Satan, is in fact the Lord of the warlord. We have to take a look at what it was that manifested in Genesis 2 and stop playing mental games about it.
Yeah, they used to tell us that story about some Genesis 2 in the garden. And that girl went ahead and ate that fruit, but she ain't died like he said. Oh, but he cursed her now. Goodness gracious, he cursed them keepers of the garden up and down for eating some fruit. She got cursed in childbirth, and that man got cursed tilling the soil. Then, after that, they got wrapped up in some dead animal skins, got led out of the garden into the wilderness, and their firstborn son, he was cursed for bringing some fruit. Secondborn son, he was blessed, I'll be damned, for bringing the blood of the lamb. Then she went and had a third son, and he was called Seth. Seth. I ain't never thought about it like that. Ooh, but it sure do sound different from Genesis 1.
We have to take a look at what it was that manifested in Genesis 2 and stop playing mental games about it, psychological games about it. Stop listening to a shape-shifting nature of energy that will tell you anything that it feel will pacify your thought and reasonings and your actions so that you do everything within your mental, physical, and spiritual state and condition to uphold and maintain it. We're talking about the it that declared, we are going to take your women and children. Like I said, who was it that they were talking to? And what was the nature of energy that was truly, wholeheartedly, and sincerely being expressed? And let's not play games. Let's take time and reason and feel and be honest, wholehearted, and sincere within our being. It becomes very clear that we're talking about a nature that opposes divine order, that opposes sacred ancestral family community order, a nature that opposes the divine union of masculine and feminine energy, he and she. If you can't reason with that, tell me what was said. We are going to take your women and children.
We shall take you and your wives and your children and shall make slaves of them.
And we're going to divide and separate them, isolate them, put them into a state and condition of psychological, mental, physical, spiritual slavery into perpetuity. What kind of love are we talking about? We have to reason with supreme truth. We have to have a clear-cut comprehension, understanding of what is, of the essence of life. What is supreme love?
Then the oldest old man double-gripped his stick and spoke. He said, we have no more time for slowpoke folk. It's time for the feminine phenomena to be awoke. Got to reach her. She's the first teacher. In her womb is the first classroom.
Now that it has been laid out for you to reason with within your own mental state and condition as to what nature of energy actually imploded upon the children of the sun. What nature of energy imploded upon those populations who had got caught in the cold, freezing blight? What nature of energy continued to manifest in the mind consciousness of those who have disregarded the sacred ancestral spirit presence of who we be? Listen. This particular point in time, we have got to get a focus on holistic living recovery. So for the sake of a few, let's set some principles. That's what we need to do. Number one, we know full well that unless we can get the women and the children back into a state and condition of divine order, where the masculine he can actually provide divine guidance and protection by the sacred ancestral principles, morals, and values from which we come as divine children of the sun, upholding and maintaining that sacred garden culture presence of higher peace, of love and respect, of dignity and humility, grace for family order. That's we can reestablish that. We ain't going nowhere. And in order to reestablish that, we have to safeguard that most precious jewel. She too has an involvement in that. She must come to a clear comprehension that she was taken. There's a lot of anger that you see, a lot of frustration, aggravation, irritation. I remember one feminine soul asking, where were you when they took us and beat me? Where were you when I got raped? Where were you when they snatched my children away? And I remember saying, somewhere in your womb, trying to remanifest as a nature of energy that could safeguard us. Because that I, who was within that body that was left laying to the side of the road, burnt, depleted, chopped up into bits, pieces, and parts by a gang of blood-spilling murderers who had nothing but joy in their heart about taking life. We're talking about blood-sucking beings who had lost their spiritual consciousness about the essence of life and had been possessed by a nature totally, absolutely, diametrically opposed to divine order. So she has to come to the recognition that the male can only be what is manifested out of she. Therefore, with him out the way,
then you can turn the stud to freedom until you need him again.
We're going to take your women and your children. In order to do that, the first things first was to deal with getting him out of the way. So as he was burnt at the stake, or chopped into parts and bits, or snatched and put shackled and chained on one of those boats within a slave ship trip, she was left vulnerable.
Train the female horse whereby she will eat out of your hand.
Now we all got to reconcile that. We got to reconcile that she was left vulnerable. What was she to do?
Train the female whereby she will eat out of your hand.
She actually communal by nature. What she was left with is what she would have to breed. in her consciousness. After a period of time, the offspring's born off of her.
Train the female whereby she will eat out of your hand, and she will in turn train the infant to eat out of your hand also.
Try to figure out a way to survive. And the mothers, the young girls who watched so much blood spill before their very eyes, had to make a decision. Just like we got to make a decision right now. She had to make a decision. And her decision was a vision of at least being able to get to a point, hopefully, maybe that could be some kind of Messiah rising. Maybe somehow a son could figure out something. And in the interim, she had to keep somebody alive. She had to keep him alive. So she made every sacrifice possible. When the demand was lay down, she laid down and gave the best that she could, and hoping that it was good enough so that she would be able, when the vibration was, we're going to have to take this one and sell him for profit, even if it was the offspring of the rapist. The communal nature in her had that feeling of love and tenderness for that offspring, yet she knew she was in a helpless state because he who had impregnated her was also the he who had either enslaved her, beaten, tortured her, or it was the he who was hired by him to come ejaculate into her. So the basic vibration, what was she to do? And so when we see the feminine walking around the way she was walking around these days, when we see her walking around like a striptease on the street, when we see her doing these bend the butt over, hiking in the air, dancing, you can comprehend that she's an expression of an expression of an expression. We're talking about 20 generations of down low, dirty energy, disrespect for her femininity, disregarding offsprings born off of she. And if you go through that for that long, extended period of time, unless you, the male, decide to step up to a whole different kind of plate. And when you do that, you have to comprehend what it is that she has been through generation after generation. Then you got to get some sense. You got to comprehend DNA. You got to comprehend genetics. You got to comprehend that, hey, whatever manifested in those great 20 generations ago is still in her.
And that oppositional nature of energy that was ejaculated into the mother spirit is still in you.
We are talking to the male who was intruded and invaded upon by that oppositional nature of energy. Because there's nothing that has been done to manifest a state and condition of detox and purging to heal. The only thing that has happened is an add-on, disguise and cover, a pale veil of deception to make her feel how she feels when you see her walking around blonding her hair, using bleach to try to get herself different, trying to become a whole new manifestation, giving glory to her skin tone because she looked clearer and nearer to the master raper, overlorder, those ones who enslaved her. And I'm talking about the energy which those beings consumed, because under any kind of condition, each and every being on the planet had and probably have the possibility of detoxing and purging and healing from that cold, wretched nature of energy. It is not about the color of one's skin. However, it did reduce to a level and degree where it changed the entire complexity of deeply melanin-encoded offsprings of the first mitochondrial mother. And so we have to take a look at this thing in a different kind of perspective if we truly want to get to a healing state and condition. This is a crisis. And at this particular point in time, it is downward spiraling implosion. Oh, it is beyond explosion. It is fueled toxic bitterness, hate, scorn deep inside the gut of a being. And as the masculine he, my sons, brethren, however way you want to call you, we have got to take a stance beyond that ego-driven self. So what happened to the male? Okay, the male was then taken as is stated and dealt with just like one deal with a horse.
Quote, take the stud, break him for limited containment.
He'd be put out to be free until he's ready to be used again. Is that free? Or is that, in fact, a new age kind of psychological slavery? So that means to say we all have got to come to a common sense reasoning that until and unless a miraculous occurrence, detox, purging, and healing occur, ain't nothing changed but the name of the game. And the name of the game keeps you enslaved mentally, physically, spiritually, all the same. When I see some of the attitudes, some of the values, some of the behaviors, and some beliefs of the masculine he, I feel so much compassion. I feel so much compassion because really he's bringing the best that he can bring under his state and condition, because remember, that original masculine he who was about providing that divine guidance and protection was snuck up on and slaughtered. And everything born off of her after that was the truth and the consequence of those invasions, those persuasions, that toxic nature of energy that was ejaculated into her and bred back again and again and again and again and again. 20 generations, 25 generations. We're only talking about during the, quote, Christopher Columbus era. Let's just say that. It went long before that. Hunting, herding, blood spilling, consuming nature of energy. And most cases, the mass majority are not going to be able to receive this message. Holistic living truth is difficult to receive, especially by those who have made an open declaration that they are diametrically opposed to divine order. It's not going to happen. So we're talking about the sacred few, the few, the few, the few, who have the heart, the gut, the soul to look at the holistic living truth and say, hey, we got to go back to origin. And not only say it because actions speak louder than words, take the necessary steps to grind it out, to have the sense of patience and tolerance and obedience. You know, most of the males don't have that sense of patience, tolerance, and obedience. Why? Because when he was set apart, set to S-E-T, apart,
Then you can turn the stud to freedom until you need him again.
self-centered, and put apart, he became a replica, a carbon copy of that image that dominated, controlled, and ruled over that mother spirit, whether that was the overlord, the warlord, the master lord, who actually ejaculated his toxicity into her, or whether he used one of his studs to do the job for him.
Then you can turn the stud to freedom until you need him again.
That sort of male is a reflection of that disorder.
I came, I saw, I conquered.
And so that produces a domineering, warlord mindset, a self-centered, individualistic mindset, a narcissistic mindset, a mindset that's stubborn and arrogant as hell. A male that can't listen to no one, a competitive male who have no desire to function within a unified bond unless he's sitting on the top of the heap. The kind that just can't merge into a oneness and say, hey, let's do this for communal order. Let's do it for the generation next. Let's do it for the women. Let's safeguard the offsprings. That generation that must begin a new cycle. Oh, that's very difficult. Because all up inside the mental consciousness of that ego-driven male who actually is a replica of that warlord syndrome that actually divided, conquered, separated, and ruled over him to this very day, even though he will say he want to be his own self, man. You're absolutely correct. Simply a replica of that warlord nature that dominated and controlled over you and then told those populations, we're going to take your women and children. And who was he talking to? Was he not talking to the male? And from that point, the male became a carbon copy, possessed by a nature diametrically opposed to divine order, divine social, economic, family, community order. So as we're talking, what I'm saying is this. The male who stands up and says, we got to be about revolution, is very clear that this is a male that is possessed with a suicidal nature, simply because he has not come to comprehend that what we have to do, and that rather than put it out on the line for more destruction, we have to create an internal pathway for the holistic living essence of life to manifest. We have to be about divine social, economic, family, community, order. We have to be about collective conscious, communal reasoning, thoughts, actions. We have to be about expanding our creativity mentally, physically, and spiritually. And we have to come to the core, the centerfold, as a collective, conscious, communal, masculine nature of energy. Then we have to comprehend that we have to cease and desist all this rap and rhetoric, all this divisive nature, and realize that the greatest thing that we can do is harmonize. We don't have to be the one that's got to be looked upon as the dominant one. Because when you get that collective conscious nature of energy into a wholeness, all for one and one for all, together we stand, divided we fall. Then you start to create a tree of life culture. You start to manifest the holistic living essence of divine children of the sun. And you take your position within that collective wholeness based on what you can contribute. And you work toward excellence. You work toward upholding and maintaining a sense of sacred ancestral masculine presence as a collective conscious wholeness, and cease and desist this self-deified individualistic nature of my family, my this and that, because that is doomed from the beginning. It is doomed. You see, a house divided cannot stand. And the reality is, that is the time when that warlord nature of energy, that cold, pale, oppositional nature of energy is at its best. Because it's already divided into me and my family. And then it gets divided between he and she. And then the generation next, the offsprings, come up under that ordeal. And they've already been born divided, conquered, and separated, competing with each other, each one fighting over whatever you managed to get in your little bitty struggle up on the earth, and leaving really nothing but conflict, confusion, and chaos behind to continue the same old game under different name. And that's not going to take us anywhere. And we have to be beyond that ego-driven self of, well, hey, while I'm on the earth, I'm going to enjoy mine, and when I'm gone, I'm gone. So self-centered, so ignorant, so disconnected from the essence of life, which means you're already dead, just waiting to find a place to push the rest of you inside of a hole, because you already have lost your soul. For those who have that pinch of soul left, let's feel it. You have to fuel it in order for it to be maintained, in order for it to be maintained. What is the fuel that we're going to need? Hey, we got to push the love supreme, baby. Yes, we got to push the love supreme. What does that mean? We got to love that sacred temple. Well, what does that mean? The heart, the core, the essence, the nucleus of that body is your soul. Yeah, but I mean, how do we fuel it? You got to fuel it with holistic living truth. If we are about life, we got to consume from the tree of life. If we are about maintaining our whole life essence, we have to manifest that sacred garden presence, because it gives us wind, rain, water, sun, and it maintains Mama Earth. We all have to come to a oneness of comprehending something here. We're talking about a nature energy that diametrically opposes who we be as man, he, and she. It is a possessive nature of energy. It has no mercy for nothing or no one, and it will possess regardless of race, creed, color, sex, national origin. And it do possess. Yes, there are those who came fully loaded with that possessive nature of energy. And their goal and objective, whether they realize it or not, within that body of flesh, was to spread that plague, baby. And believe you me, that pale veil of plague destruction has spread far and wide. Keep in mind, now and I'm speaking from the fact of knowing we began from a collective oneness, the first genesis manifestation of who we be, and that the mitochondrial mother is not a joke, and that we happen to be of that first fathering nature when we uphold and maintain the principles, morals, and values of divine socio-economic family community order, that sacred garden culture present, consuming of the fruits of the tree of life, the raw living fruits, vegetables, seeds, and nuts, herbs, and spice, maintaining that glory of honoring earth, wind, rain, and sun. Then we come to a full connection with that most supreme seen and unseen essence of life and supreme love, recognizing that the most supreme seen and unseen essence of masculine and feminine energy is, was, and will always be essence of life and supreme love. So we got some healing to do. The revealing is for us to have the opportunity to quick, fast, and in a hurry indulge in this healing process. Got to let stuff go. A lot that's got to let go. A lot of hateful, vengeful, spiteful energy. We have to come to the comprehension that talking is not going to make it go. When we think about that mother spirit, we got to feel her. And we got to feel what she's went to get to who she is right now. 20 generations, 25 generations, 25 generations ago to now. And that sometimes will look nearly impossible. She behaves in ways that she don't even comprehend why she's behaving in those ways. The stress, the strain, the anger, the hostile aggression, the bitterness, the scornfulness. She has come to generational feelings over long extended periods of time that make her feel a certain kind of way. When the male comes to her and she feel like, oh, maybe he cares. And he trying to get in between her legs, but he don't even know why. His thing is just bumping up and he's like, oh my goodness, man, she fine. Not comprehending that we have natural and innate pulls toward each other, masculine and feminine, for a reason to maintain our essence upon this planet, and that it is encoded within our DNA. And when we look and we feel the sense that this being will be able to carry the whole soul essence of who we be in natural and innate order, we get an attraction toward her. There's a period of time every month that she go through a calling for a sense of wanting to be dealt with. Most of the time, you don't even know. They say you're ovulating. And she said, well, I'm feeling hot. I don't comprehend. She gets the itching and scratching. She's vulnerable. And most beings don't have no respect, even knowing or comprehension about her biological state of being, her anatomical structure, or anything relating to her except, goodness gracious, look at them hips. Man, look how she walking. Hey, I got to get some of that. Which is total insanity. Because you're then perpetuating that cold, pale nature of energy that looked at her and grabbed his gun or whatever it was and put it up on and shot the male and grabbed her. Because of a vicious insensitivity to the fact that you are dealing with the sacred, ancestral, soulful essence of our existence. She who carries we forward, and she will carry whatever is brought to her. We got to comprehend that when she was going through those ordeals that ripped and tore apart her heart and soul, that was encoded within her, and she's going to breed it back. And the breeded ones who she breed, going to breed it back. And each time, if it's no detox, purging, and healing, it's going to breed back to a deeper level and degree till they get to the point of toxic implosion. And we don't want to reach that level. We come very close. We look around at the social environment, we see that, and we have to make sure that we get on our job. Now, it's very difficult because all surrounding us is that toxic nature of energy, and it's busy about what it do. Implosion, explosion, war, destruction. Always looking for a new victim. A cold-blooded predator. Seeking and searching ways and means to consume the soul of another being. We're talking about a cold, blood-spilling, soul-sucking patrol. And until we can come to the full recognition of that and make a straight, heartfelt decision, he, masculine, unless we can decide that we're going to dig deep, 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 deep inside of the soulful essence of who we be and take a stance on becoming a new kind of he. Unless we make that decision, unless we become the masculine phenomenon, we are not going to be able to go any further than right here, because we can be the masculine phenomena. And if we don't get that feminine phenomena bred, who's going to actually carry the seeds of divine order, we're done. It's over and out. Let's break the codes of this narcissistic energy that want to act like it know everything and that it is the almighty and omnipotent. Come on. We're not one to continue to breed almighty and omnipotent insanity. We must be about breeding, seeding, and feeding a new consciousness. And it's not going to happen unless we can get the divine union of masculine and feminine energy forward again into a divine union of oneness with the purpose, the intent, the opportunity that's given to us, taking advantage of it, to breed, seed, and feed every element within us that will be able to assist in the manifestation of divine, social, economic, family, community order.
Overstand the nature of who you be as a part of humanity, and then you'll understand the nature that a